The Core i7-12700H mobile processor is although very powerful, and despite being faster in single-core performance than one of the AMD Zen 3 Cezanne CPU, recent benchmarks show that the latter is faster when we consider power consumption of both the CPUs. Despite owning the CPU market in 2022, Intel is not very far ahead of AMD Zen 3 based mobile CPUs, and to be honest, the latter seem to have an upper hand in a few cases. Yes, Intel is gaining the CPU market rapidly due to faster and cheaper desktop Alder Lake CPUs. But on laptops, Intel is still struggling to outperform AMD. Let me give you a recent example of this. In a recent post by notebookcheck.net, they compared the Alienware X14 with Core i7-12700H to the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7 Pro 14 featuring the Ryzen 9 5900HS. Both of these CPUs are high-end tier processors that excel in both gaming and productivity. As far as the specs go, the i7-12700H features 14 cores and 20 threads, while the 5900HS features 8 cores and 16 threads. On paper, it looks like the i7 should be faster in both single-core and multi-core performance due to featuring more cores and threads, but it is not similar to the Ryzen CPU as it features 6 performance cores and 8 efficient cores that work in a different way than the traditional CPUs. Now, Notebook Check tested them in various applications like the Cinebench, Blender, 7-Zip, etc. Applications like Geekbench and HWBot favor the i7, but the Cinebench tests have totally different results. On the paper, it looks like the Core i7 is faster than the Ryzen 5900HS in single-core tests, but the Ryzen 5900HS takes a good lead in multi-core performance. However, the catch here is that Ryzen 5900HS is far more power efficient than the Core i7-12700H. According to the tests, both of these laptops stayed at around 40 to 45 watts of TDP, but this is only in the case of multi-core tests. To be exactly accurate, the i7 was consuming around 45 watts, while the 5900HS sat at 42 watts constantly. The Ryzen proves itself to be 4 to 5% faster in multi-core Cinebench tests, even though it features 4 less threads. The possible reason for the slow multi-core performance of the i7 is the low performance core count. The i7-12700K desktop CPU although has 2 cores less than the 12700H, it has 8 performance cores unlike the 12700H which has only 6 performance cores. High power consumption might be the reason for why Intel reduced the performance core count on the 12700H, otherwise it could have been even higher than 45 watts. Now coming to the single core tests, the i7-12700H looks like way ahead of the Ryzen 5900HS. In all the 3 Cinebench tests, it is 7 to 18% faster than the Ryzen CPU, but the power consumption here is very different than the multi-core test. The i7 was consuming an average of 29 watts, however the Ryzen 5900HS was only consuming 18 watts. So if we calculate the score per watt, the i7 scores 58.9 points per watt in Cinebench R23, whereas the Ryzen 5900HS scores 81.5 points per watt. This makes the Ryzen 5900HS around 38% faster than the 12700H. So efficiency wise, the Zen 3 Cezanne CPUs look better than the Alder Lake, and while desktop Alder Lake CPUs are dominating the market, AMD is still going to be more popular among those who want better performance on low power on laptops. Now Rembrandt APUs make it even better for AMD as they bring higher CPU performance and much higher GPU performance due to RDNA2 architecture. The only thing now AMD needs is to focus on the Ryzen 7000 series desktop CPUs, as Ryzen 5000 is losing the battle against the Alder Lake CPUs. While AMD is going to launch more CPUs in the Ryzen 5000 family, it will be still difficult for AMD to outperform Intel, except if it prices its CPUs lower than the competitor. You can know about these new AMD CPUs right here from this video, and I recommend you to subscribe if you don't want to miss any updates on the upcoming CPU battle. Till then, goodbye, and I will see you next time.